Hi, everyone, and welcome to the I Am Landscape Growth Podcast, where entrepreneurs help entrepreneurs grow faster, better, and stronger in the green industry. From leadership to sales to recruiting and operational excellence, we cover the topics holding entrepreneurs back and share how to get past those bottlenecks with the best in the industry. I'm your host, Rob Murray, co founder and CEO of Intrigue, a digital marketing company focused on helping landscape companies grow. So sit back and enjoy the show. Well, hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of I Am Landscape Growth Podcast. Today, I have the honor and privilege of having Jacki Hart on the show, president of Consulting by Heart, an organization focused on helping companies grow from the inside out, specifically helping owners get their head right so they can go grow awesome teams and awesome businesses. Jacki, thank you so much for doing this.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
All right. So as we get into this, I know we got a lot to chew on and a lot of value to bring to the audience. Can you just give us a quick kind of Cole's Notes version of how you ended up starting Consulting by Heart and what kind of got you to this spot in your career?
Basically, what got me to this spot is 25 years of running my own landscape contracting company in Muskoka in central Ontario. And the first 10 years made every possible mistake I could have made. Self-taught and had already been in the horticulture garden center retail sector for 10 years and worked for a garden center that went out of business. And I had customers calling me going, how come my gardens haven't been looked after? And anyway, so I realized the hard way and ended up hiring a couple of consultants to help me turn my business around. And after 25 years, I sold it. And I stayed on for a couple of years in transition. But through that whole period, I was working for Landscape Ontario doing some professional development seminars
Very cool.
and teaching people how to get return on investment and recover their overhead costs and build better teams. And it just kind of happened that I started taking on clients, doing coaching, and now I do a lot of I run the Prosperity Partners program for Landscape Ontario. So I run their peer-to-peer network, which has 350 business owners in it.
Awesome.
And we do face-to-face events. And then I also do the Employers of Choice program, which is an online virtual training program with a really robust business toolbox for employers to take. So we put 100 people through that every year. And I've got lots of clients coast to coast. I do not work south of the border. I only work in Canada by choice.
Yep.
And so I'm working with businesses anywhere from 40 million to 400,000.
Very cool. That's
Yeah.
awesome. It's a really important, I think, aspect for people to understand that your perspective coming from someone who did it,
Mhm.
growing it from chaos into saleable.
Mhm.
So we're really stoked to have you on the show and kind of shed some light, because not only do you have that perspective, but you also have the one of seeing many businesses across,
Yes.
a bunch of different and business environments, different sizes, working on different challenges. So let's kind of get into it then. The theme of this whole show is around helping people scale and finding those growth constraints and bottlenecks inside their organization so they can address them well and move past them. So you know times are always a changing. What do you see right now across your clients and the industry as the kind of primary growth constraint in the market?
So there's a few. And I think we all know that labor has been at the forefront of many people's minds. And it doesn't just, it's not just landscaping, it's, I think, contracting in general,
Mhm.
and retail as well. So labor is a big one. And I think if you drill down into labor, there's a whole lot of pieces to that. Sometimes it's the culture in the company is not right fit for the key demographic that a company is marketing to and trying to attract in. Sometimes it has to do with the leadership within the company and how well the business leaders are able to train. Like, it's one thing to have capability and have expertise and be a master at doing certain components of the work that the company performs, but it's a totally different thing being able to teach other people to do it. So if you've got a bunch of really, really skilled equipment operators and horticulturists and designers on your team, but nobody really knows how to transfer those skills to others, it's tough to get new people coming in the door
And
to
skilled up and ready to
to
go.
skill up, right? And to have confidence and to feel engaged. So they leave, right? So retention, there's a whole bunch of things mixed into retention that interferes with and interrupts growth. And one of the biggest things I say to many of my clients is, one of the key structures in a landscape, in particular landscape or a construction company format, is you've got maybe a supervisor or an operations manager, and then you've got a foreperson, and then you've got a lead hand, and then you've got laborers, and you have this hierarchical structure. The challenge is when you bring someone new into the team, who's the one doing most of the training? Foreman, right?
Typically.
So now you've got your highest paid person on the crew being least productive and least effective because they're spending most of their time supervising and managing and training other people. And that adds frustration. And when you get that frustration, then
The culture shifts.
Yeah, the culture shifts and people can feel it, right? Like,
Yeah,
so
it's
new
palpable.
employees coming in, they can feel that frustration. They can feel, oh, I'm just being a pain in the butt. And there's sometimes it leads to impatience of people not learning quick enough. Equipment breaks, things drop balls, there's rework, things have to get done over again. Somebody plants the wrong plant somewhere, prunes the wrong shrub, or pulls the wrong perennial out thinking it's a weed, and or the grading gets done incorrectly and you got to pull up half of the patio. Like, there's all sorts of things that can happen that lead to frustration and low production rates. So that interrupts growth, because if you can't build the bench strength, and if you can't deepen and broaden the capability of the whole team, you can't grow.
Yeah.
Because you can't grow another team. And we all know that trying to recruit leaders, trying to recruit forepersons, that's the number one position I hear across Canada cannot find.
Right.
Skilled, like really skilled people who can lead. So one of the biggest challenges to growth is leadership. And leadership has to do with the internal company brand. So, Rob, to what you guys do at Intrigue, the external company brand, which is what the customers see, right? And how well are you matching, how well are you capturing the right fit clients to come into the business, is all about and all about how the company's positioned. But what happens with the internal brand is where the bottleneck is, right? So what's the brand the employees experience? And is it aligned with the brand that the customers are expecting to experience?
Oh, it's
because
so good,
of what
Jacki.
you promised them.
We talk about the idea, right? 50% of marketing is making a promise, 50% of marketing is delivering the promise.
Right. So I always talk about the external brand. Who are you in the marketplace? How have you positioned yourself? What promises are you making? And what's your ideal client avatar? Right? What's the ideal size of project? So if we want to talk about size of project for a second, I'm going to segue to things that are challenging growth, business growth. We are seeing north of the border, for sure, coast to coast, because I've got clients coast to coast. I am seeing a pullback in discretionary spending for income earners owning properties that are probably residential in particular, probably under $1 million or close to $1 million properties, residential properties. That marketplace of, in particular, landscape construction projects between 25 to 175,000. Snapshot. Like, it is drying up fast. And if it hasn't dried up for your listeners and they're in construction, hang on to your hat. So for builders and contractors, it's that under $1 million. If it's not a subdivision home, but more custom home building, under $1.5 million, you're going to see people starting to cut back on features, starting to look at the cost of a project and pull back a little bit. And I think we're going to have a very bumpy 2024. I don't have a crystal ball, but I'm really tied to the market with the markets with my own investments. And I've got my ear to the ground, and I can see the signs are that volatility is going to continue. And as interest rates in Canada keep going up, bond rates will fall, and there's all sorts of other things that are going to happen that make the average consumer look at their return on their investments, look at their mortgage rates and go, oh my gosh, look at inflation, look at the cost of, I mean, inflation was last October 8.3 and now it's 2.8 in Canada. But I'm sorry, I don't know about you, but I haven't seen the cost of a head of lettuce or a loaf of bread get any cheaper in the last 8 months than it was all through 2022. So I think it's hitting people in their pockets. And so we're starting to see a real pullback in that mid to lower end market. So in maintenance, companies that are doing, in particular, residential maintenance, we're seeing a lot of pullback in frequency of visits. So from weekly to biweekly, from biweekly to monthly,
Right.
or 3 times seasonally. So you're starting to see the same trends that I saw in 2008 in my own landscape business, right? And in 1996, when we had recessionary trending. And there's a lot of your listeners here who are young enough and new enough in business. You've never navigated your way through a recession.
Yeah.
You've never experienced it. And it's been 15 years. So
Okay,
anyone
cool.
who's,
So I'm gonna
anyone who's entered in the last 15 years doesn't have the skills. So you have to pay attention to what's happening.
Yeah, and start listening to things like this and getting involved with Landscape Ontario, whatever association, and talking to Jacki Hart. But let's go back to this thing, because you mentioned that foremen are the ones doing a lot of training, and that can like lead to frustration. You've got high paid, unproductive staff members that are working with people that are brand new in the industry. So what maybe can people think about doing differently to make the outcome better when it comes to training programs and upskilling new staff?
Great question. So think about the relationship between stress and effectiveness. Stress goes up, effectiveness comes down.
Yeah, inverse relationship.
Stress comes down, effectiveness goes up. So let's talk. So think about what is stressing people out. Okay. And we have this kind of new thing on the horizon when you talk about keeping stress levels down, because when stress is down in the workplace, everybody gets along, everybody's learning at a decent pace, the work is happening, people care about each other, there's empathy, and there's lifestyle balance. There's that keyword, lifestyle balance. So if somebody needs to take their kid or their parent to the hospital or the grant or the doctor, or they've got a dentist appointment, they don't get a lot of fly. It's like, okay, just let me know. If you're having a hard time making it to pick up the kids off the school bus, let me know. Let's talk about what your hours need to be.
Yeah.
And no more can you expect your entire staff. And this is where it gets really difficult with production crews. You can no longer expect that everyone in your company will show up at the gate at 7 or 6 or 6:30, whatever time that is, and work till 5 or 5:30, 5 days a week. Not happening. The companies who have the highest retention, I can tell you this for sure, the companies who have the highest retention and who have the highest learning rate, like advancement, capability advancement, are the companies who allow their staff the grace of flexibility. So if I've got kids and I'm a single dad and I've got my kids every other week, then every other week I can't be at work till 8 o'clock and I got to leave by 4:30.
Yeah, I mean, that just happens. Like,
and
you don't have a choice.
There's some employers for many, many years, the blueprint in this industry was, nope, you show up at 7, you leave at 5:30, or we don't need you.
Yeah.
Can't do that anymore. So in order to keep people engaged and in order to keep that training and the learning curve moving along smoothly, first of all, you got to lower stress. Okay. Life doesn't stop at the gate when people show up at your business. Life does not stop at the gate.
What do you mean, Jacki?
Yeah, sorry, but it doesn't. So, you can't see me because this is a podcast and I have gray hair and it's well earned. So
this will be on LinkedIn or something like that.
So people out there with gray hair, we weren't raised that way. We were raised, you work when you're told to work and you show up and life comes second. So that's a total shift. So the other thing you have to figure out is who on your team can actually teach others. Who's got the patience?
Right. So it's not necessarily a role as much as it's a person. It's a
Right.
A who, not how kind of question.
It's soft skills, right? It's really tough to teach someone to be a good teacher. It's either, I think it's either innate or it's either in you or it isn't. So there will be people who are on a crew, probably a foreman, who, you know what, you just ought to leave them in the excavator and let them do their thing and not expect them to train someone how to run a plate tamper.
Right.
And same thing would go, with a mowing crew. Like there'd be someone who's going to hit it out of the park and have huge production rates. That's actually not the person to take off the mower and train somebody else.
Yeah, even though they're the
So,
best and they know what they're doing. It's like putting
right,
Wayne Gretzky in the bench the Arizona Coyotes. It doesn't work.
right,
So then,
okay.
how do you? One quick tip, and then we'll move on to the next ones because you got a bunch more, and I want to make sure these people get a chance to listen to. But one quick tip on how to identify a good trainer.
Ask them,
Ooh, tell
talk
me
to
more.
them, talk to them. The most common pattern that I see is business owners or business managers second guessing who they have on the team, who wants to do what, who's passionate about what. So the decision is made by the wrong person to choose who's going to do the training. Often,
Mm,
sometimes not, but often. So what I mean by that is if you have 4 people on a crew and it's a foreman, a lead hand, and 2 laborers, and one of the 2 laborers who has the least amount of skill actually is really has a natural ability to teach someone else, that's the person that you go to and say, can you help the foreman to teach you how to do this? So you talk to the foreman, you say, okay, I want you to show so and so how to run a plate tamper or a quick cut saw
whatever
or
it may X,
whatever.
Y, Z. Yeah.
Yep. And so the way we're going to do this is it's going to be that 4-step. You watch. So the foreman says, you watch me do it. Then you help me do it. And then I'll watch you do it. Or sorry, I'll help you do it. And then I'll watch you do it.
There you
So
go.
if you can break it into those 4 steps, you watch me,
Yeah.
then you
Help me.
help me. I will help you. And then I will watch you. So if the guy who doesn't know how to train well can just think of those 4 steps, and the person who has that natural ability, if they can just torture the 4 person long enough to go through those 4 steps,
Then they can train next 5 people.
then they can train the next 5 people. Okay. So the 4 person is your most productive person, and they got to be able to focus on the game. So I always try to get teams to help each other. And I've got a really cool tool I'm working with a client down on the East Coast. And I've actually got 5 other client companies all collaborating to develop this tool together. And it's like a capability matrix. So
Sweet.
it's tied to hourly rate and capability and stuff. So what's happening is the staff all have every skill that they need to know how to do, and they have a score
Yeah.
of one to of
Perfect.
1 to 4. Right?
And
They got a
giving
score of one to
clarity.
four. How good they are doing it, and whether or not they're okay to teach it, whether they can teach it. And what's happening is anyone who's like a 2 on something, they're sitting down at their break and going, okay, who's a 3 on this? Because like I got to get to a 3 by the time I get my next review, so I can bring my score up and get another 50 cents an hour. So who else is a 3 on this, or who's got 4? Like, help me out, guys. And so they're co-training each other.
Oh, that's magic, Jackie.
It's super cool. So the 4 person is listening to all this going, sweet, like these guys are like trying to figure it out themselves. And so now the 4 person is more engaged to give them quick tips and
Yeah.
then let them run with it. So it doesn't just have to be the 4 person, and that's a bottleneck. And when you take your best, highest paid, most skilled person, and they're always helping someone else learn, their stress levels up, their effectiveness is down, and the tension gets high on the crew. When the tension's high on the crew, people
No
leave.
bueno. Yeah, not good. Okay,
Right?
that's awesome. Great training tip for all people that have foreman training a lot. Those 4 steps, watch
Mm-hmm.
me, help me, I'll help you, I'll
I'll
watch
watch you.
you. Beautifully simple, often forgotten.
Mhm.
And then, this skills matrix, is there a way for people to get in on this?
Not yet.
All right,
Stay tuned.
stay tuned, stay tuned.
Maybe the next time I'm
Or
back
just,
on the
yeah,
podcast.
make sure you follow Jackie Hart, Consulting by Heart on LinkedIn, and then you'll be able to know what's going on when it comes out. Okay, you
Thank you.
mentioned size of project and
Mhm.
maintenance being less frequent, and you kind of
Mhm.
alluded to this idea around growth constraint. You know, whether it's a macro play in terms of inflation, interest rates, and economic
Mhm.
conditions, or the consumer demand, lack thereof. You know, they're both tied together. Can you just speak a little bit more to that and what you're seeing, what people can do about it?
Well, so it's kind of the similar advice I gave at the beginning of the pandemic in the spring of 2020. And that is prepare yourself for a potentially bumpy 2024. And the most important thing as a business owner to do, or a business manager, is build a war chest of cash. And when I say cash, I do not mean go and do jobs for cash. I
Right.
mean, keep money in the bank.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, don't get me wrong. Keep money in the bank.
Pay down the line of
And
credit. Make sure you've got
yeah,
your own free balance of cash in your bank account.
correct. And stop buying toys. And be cautious of taking on anything at a higher interest rate for now. I know north of the border, interest rates are climbing and they're maybe not south of the border as quickly. But just make sure that first and foremost, you're paying attention to your budget. So you need to understand, okay, if a percentage of my sales funnel shrinks, what do I need to turn on in my marketing and call my entry person? What do I need to turn on in my Google AdWords or whatever to bring more of the type of contracts that are not drying up? So a little more affluent, a little higher end
Yeah.
is
Push up
where,
market.
so right. So I'm, for example, I work for a pool company and they build both gunite and vinyl pools. The vinyl pool market across 6 companies that I know of has snapped shut
Mm,
in the last 2 months. Snapped shut, like dried up. Very few, like way down in sales, way down. And but the million plus projects, pool landscape, are crazy.
right.
So that echelon of clientele who have enough discretionary income to spend, or enough income to spend to use for discretionary spending, is what I'm trying to say. Um, they don't care if the
Well,
markets have a little bumpy and a little volatile. That's okay.
and to
You
add
know,
to that, you know, a lot of folks we've talked to in the last over the last 12, 18 months, we've been asking questions like, you know, where are people getting the money to do the projects? And it was like 75%, 3 out of 4 people using a home equity line of credit. So if your main
that's going to
target
dry up.
if your main target audience is using a HELOC or a home equity line of credit, then that's no good.
Yep.
And
Yep.
so
That's
how can we push up market and find people that are using cash,
correct.
or liquidating stock, in order to pay for projects and not using
Right.
interest?
Right. So if that's not your established clientele, if that's not the market that your business is in, then perhaps look for um, consumables that people use no matter what. And for example, maybe landscape lighting might be somewhat discretionary, but irrigation, especially if you're on the West Coast, oh my gosh, like they're in droughts like crazy in BC, and when they don't have deluges and floods.
Right.
Same with Nova Scotia, sadly.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Um, but so looking at, is there a different service line? Can I amalgamate with it? Can I buy out another company or bring in another company with me that offers a different service to expand my service offerings? That's a possibility. There's a lot of that going on right now. Um, and I think really being clear on, okay, if my sales, let's say I projected my sales to be 2 million and it looks like we're tracking to be 1,750,000, am I going to recover my overhead?
Yeah.
Am I going to be able to recover all the overhead that I have, or do I need to pull back, lean out, get rid of a fancy truck or whatever? Like, you need to make sure that you don't get to next spring and go, how come the phone's not ringing? Because I'm on fumes for cash flow after
Yeah.
the winter. So
Yeah, and
it's
one
so
one last thing
important.
too on the note that you're talking about looking at what can you be selling and what kind of clientele can you go after, but also consider like knocking on the doors of maybe some of the large companies in your area and say, do you want some help? And so
Yes.
there's a lot of big contractors that need support that can't find great people in their own statements. But like if a $2 million landscape company calls up on a $20 million landscape company and saying, hey, if you're looking for some help for big projects, we're here to help. Breath of fresh air. No one's willing to do it. Every time I talk about it, people are like, really? I think you'd be surprised how much people want the help. And the industry itself is so good. Everybody's so good working with each other. I don't think people quite get it because like we worked a lot of different industries over the years, and landscapers and the green industry just has this sense of co-opetition or cooperation. It's pretty cool. So anyway, just another thought to add to what you're saying.
That certainly works. The only provision the caution I'm going to put there is to make sure that the type of project if you want to be a subcontractor, just make sure that the type of project that you're doing, the overall size of the project is for a clientele that has given the general contractor enough cushion to add a project management fee on top of your price. So if you're
Yeah,
going to
that's
be a
fair.
subcontractor, don't lower your price. You still need to recover your overhead and get profit and pay your people well.
Mhm.
So because a lot of people make the mistake of saying, well, you're a sub, so I need you to give me a 10% discount because I got to manage you and I brought you, I'm going to get a referral fee from you for 10 or 15%. You're going to discount your work. Well, for most landscape companies, that's
That's
more
the
than their
margin.
net profit.
That's the whole thing. Yeah.
So be very careful. So subcon is a great suggestion, Rob, a great suggestion. And be careful that you're not discounting your work in order to keep your staff busy if it means you go below break even. So you
Nicely done.
have to know your numbers when you're coming into a time where you need to know if you want to grow your business, you need to know where you're making money. And as the economy shifts and gets a little bumpy, and we have some spikes up, down, up, down, up, down, you need to know where you're making money so you can first and foremost go do more of that.
Yeah, that's cool. Do you have any tips on how people can identify that outside of just like calling you in?
Absolutely.
Okay, go for it.
Well, absolutely. Run your income statement, your P&L by division. So sales minus cost of goods sold equals gross profit. That top half of the income statement, you need to run it by division. So if you have landscape construction,
Residential maintenance, commercial maintenance, snow.
snow, right? If you do irrigation, if you do lighting, if you
Don't run
do,
don't run your income statement by snow. You're not gonna like what you see.
well, you know what? And you might not like what you see, but it certainly is going to teach you how to price properly so that
No
you do
doubt.
like what you see,
That's great.
right? So what I'm talking about is material, labor, equipment, subs.
Grouped
Those
by
are
division.
cost of goods. Those are cost of goods sold, and they should be tracked on the income statement by division. So if you're doing design only, and you do design build, and part of design build is soft planting, and you want to say, okay, are we making money laying pavers,
Mhm.
or are we making money planting? You can split that. Even if you're just a design build company, you
Yeah,
can
that's
say,
great.
okay, do we make money doing design? How much do we pay a designer? How much is a design fee? Do we make money installing pavers and walls and whatever? Do we make money installing irrigation? Do we make money doing the planting, the soft planting, and the mulch,
Love
laying
it.
sod? If you have it all in one big bucket, you have no idea what type of project is more profitable for you. So if you're making tons of money laying pavers and you are not making a lot of money at planting, go after the character of jobs that have a lot of hard surface without a lot of planting.
Yeah, makes sense and
Like
simple.
if you don't break your P&L up like that,
You
you
can't
can't
see it
grow your business because you might be growing the least profitable division.
and putting
So,
yourself further and further in the hole. You don't even know.
right. So more sales doesn't mean more profit.
Say it again, Jackie. People don't get it.
More sales does not necessarily mean more profit. You got to know where you're making the money.
So, okay.
And the biggest part of that, okay, so I should probably have said right at the very beginning, Rob, when you asked me this question about, what gets in the way of growth.
Mm,
Landscape and general contracting business owners hate sitting at a desk.
right.
And if you hate sitting at a desk, hire somebody very clever who doesn't hate
Who likes
sitting at a
sitting
desk.
at desks?
There's only so much you can do on your phone with QuickBooks,
Right.
right? Sooner or later, you need to actually understand what your numbers mean. That's a lot of what I spend my time doing, is making sure people understand, A, that the numbers in their QuickBooks or their books are accurate, because
Mhm.
often things are entered where they don't belong
Right.
because the person in the office doesn't know, I'll put it there. And now you got numbers that don't tell you anything. So the numbers part of the business is typically what gets in the way of growth, because you don't have enough money in the bank at the end of the year to grow.
Well, and if you don't have the right information, you're making decisions on false assumptions, and then
Correct.
that's just bad news bears for everybody. Okay, so um, in terms of constraints, we're seeing economic conditions might have an impact. Types of jobs are shifting. We got to know our finances to know what to sell. When it comes to team and staff, making sure that we've got the right people training, making sure we have a culture of positivity so that people are having fun while they're working.
Mhm.
Flexibility is within the winners in terms of their teams and being able
Mhm.
to show up and leave when they need to support their families and their lives.
Right.
Where do you see the greatest opportunity? Like, where do you see something where you're like, you know what, this is something people really need to be focused on. This is a great opportunity for XYZ.
Building a healthy company culture.
So tell us about that, because that's like the best. Healthy company culture means people are having fun. They're having energy when they go home to their families. Everybody's having a good, or not necessarily a good time, but it's meaningful
They're
and
energized,
they're energized.
right? They're engaged, they're
Mhm.
energized, they want to learn, they're helping each other, they're
They want to
collaborating with
stay.
each other, they
They want
want
to
to
stay.
stay, they want to come to work.
Yeah.
And if they decide to leave, they do it tastefully.
Yeah. Beautiful. So not just like a 6-year person. Hey, I got 2 weeks by.
Right. So, let's face it, millennials, right? Right now they're late 40s to early 30s, right? Year one. Um, Average length of time at a job, 3.4 years. Gen Z, 30, late 30s, mid to late 30, no, mid 30s and down to early 20s, 2.3 years.
Not a long time.
Add the seasonal, the seasonal
Component to the whole
challenge,
work yet.
and it's even less. So if you want to beat the odds, you need to create a place where people feel respected, where there's empathy, where they feel supported. And there's this thing kind of creeping in now that's called empathy burnout with employers, and compassion fatigue is another one. And that's where employers are like, okay, could people just kind of suck it up and show up for work? Right. And unfortunately, no, they can't. So there's the companies that I work for who have worked really hard on culture so that everyone has a voice, and we don't have that hierarchy of I'm the foreman, so you do what I tell you to,
Mm,
but rather we have more of an agile cooperative. So a collaborative team where everyone has the opportunity to put forward a really great idea. And um, when you have that hierarchy and someone feels like they're just a laborer, you have the wrong company culture,
right.
right?
Well, it's like, yeah, it's
And
not, collaborative, right?
correct. And it's not respectful. Like
Right.
everyone wants to feel valued. And this sounds like all the touchy-feely, softy stuff that most of you are rolling your eyes at, but how's that working for you?
Yeah.
What's your staff turnover like?
Yeah.
Because if your staff turnover is high, you're either not paying enough at entry level, your teachers suck, and your career path, your opportunity path is non-existent. So when someone starts with your business, when starts in your company, they have no idea where they can grow to.
Mhm.
Unless there's a training plan, a learning plan, a path here, this is where you could move through to, and here's what you need to learn along the way. And if you don't want to become a foreperson, that's fine. If you become super capable at all these different tasks, you're going to get a foreman's wage anyways, because you're
Yeah.
worth it to us, especially if you can teach others and train others. So that's the biggest bottleneck is.
So then let's say, okay, so say I'm an owner of a company right now and my culture isn't necessarily the best and I want to change it. How do I start that process from your perspective?
Check your ego at the door. Look in the mirror.
Is there a resource though that someone can be maybe walk through? Like 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership, John C. Maxwell is kind of a good one. If you read that book, it might,
Yeah, that's a good one.
help you
Yep.
look in the mirror. Anything else though, in terms of like getting the mindset straight? Because sometimes it can be tough for someone to recognize that they need to make the change they need to make. So if there's any thoughts or in your experience of people that have gone through something that's given them, that kick in the butt or that catalyst that says, maybe this is me.
Giving your staff the opportunity to give you objective and anonymous feedback.
Anonymous feedback is the kicker. Can you tell us why?
A lot of people aren't going to speak up to the boss and say, hey, I think you're a jerk. And, like they're just not, right?
It's pretty
like,
simple.
People have to pay their bills. But being able to actually have like a survey monkey or something where people know that it's anonymous because they've never entered their name. And the employers who I have coached through a really dictatorial, punitive culture to start with when they first came to me, and have now shifted to a much more collaborative, respectful, empathetic, real team.
Service-minded, team-oriented.
Yeah. They're the ones who have just really had a huge reality check in terms of who they need to show up as at work.
Cool.
Right.
And
how
probably
they need
having
to
more
treat
fun,
people.
probably enjoying life more.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
I'm thinking, as I'm saying this, I'm thinking of two companies that I work for that are just, small but mighty. They're, 2 million-ish and half a dozen staff and working really hard and doing lots of landscape construction and really good at it. And the owner was very punitive and very always thinking about consequence.
Right.
They don't, what policies do I need to put? Jackie, help me write some policies. So if the guys do this, I can write them up. I'm like, no, I'm not helping you to write policies. I'm going to teach you. I'm going to teach you how to manage your team without writing people up. It's called, let's just sit down and have a conversation.
Yeah. Humanistic approach to organizational behavior. Who would have thought?
Right. And the biggest challenge is most guys will say to me, I'm you're using the word foreman, I'm using the word foreperson, and I'm saying the word guys, but I should be saying most business owners, right?
My bad.
But most will say to me, I don't have time for that. And I just sit back and I go, so how's it working for you? Because you don't have enough staff. You don't have enough skilled staff. Your jobs are falling apart. Your customers are screaming at you. Your receivables are really high because customers are pissed off. So they're weaponizing money. And how's it working for you? It's time to try something different. And if they're not willing to actually look at how to build a better culture, you start with core values. What's non-negotiable? What's super important? And get your staff to help you to develop those core values. Right? I can give you a ton of examples of how that works, but they become the behavior guide. So if you've got staff who are leaving broken tools in the corner of the shop and it drives you crazy because now you got to go rent stuff because the stuff they needed on the job is broken and nobody told you. And oh my God, that used to happen to me all the time, drove me nuts. But when I finally got a consultant to help me, first thing we started with was core values. And once you've established those core values, it's like, okay, broken tool in the corner of the shop. Okay, guys, help me to understand how that reflects a core value. Our core values were competence, adaptability, respect, and excellence. I can still remember it from Water's Edge Landscaping. And I sold that company 9 years ago, and I can still remember the core values. And competence, adaptability, respect, and excellence. Broken tool in the corner of the shop without a tag on it. Nobody says, oh yeah, I broke it or this or that. help me understand how that even comes close
To anything like that in our core values.
to respect, to excellence, or to competence, because we have a process. And like, I just stand there, say, I need you to help me understand how that reflects these core values. And then I've got the whole, team of 25 standing around, and there's this deep study of work boots
Right.
because they're all like looking at the ground going, oh, and then I wait. I would wait. And then finally someone would say, well, okay, it kind of doesn't. Like, okay, so what needed to happen differently? And how do we do this differently going forward? Because if the process I created doesn't work, tell me, what should it be?
Yeah,
Because
no problem.
I'm just trying to make sure you guys have the tools you need to go and do your job. And you can't grow a business if half of your equipment is not looked after properly and it's always broken.
Yeah, that's great. So on that note, okay, so and to wrap up, do you share with like people in that whole Gallup poll, 12 questions for a healthy organization study?
I haven't.
Okay, so this I'll put a link into the bio and description of all this stuff and send it to you, Jackie. And this
Okay.
is kind of a good starting point for anonymous feedback for leaders, because it's an organizational health check, not like a CEO ego, destruction.
Mhm.
um, anyway,
Some egos do need to be knocked back a peg or
oh,
two,
of
though.
course. I'm just saying it's a good first step.
Right.
I know I've done anonymous feedback for me as the CEO of this company, and as much as I, proactively look for it, every 6 to 12 months, it still takes, it takes a hit. Um,
Mhm.
but I mean, that's where I grow the most.
But look at
Uh,
where you've grown to.
Oh, for sure. I'm just saying if someone's new to the process, this is a good starting point because it evaluates the
Yes.
organization. Anyways,
Right.
12 questions. One of them, there are 12 statements, and then it goes from strongly disagree to strongly agree. One of them is I'm extremely satisfied at this place of work. One of them, I have the tools to do my best to do my job well. I've received recognition the last 7 days for doing good work. My opinion seems to count. Anyway, um, I'll put a link to it and I'll send it
Okay.
to you right now. But it could
Excellent.
be a cool point in terms of like what you're saying about culture and building a strong, healthy organization as a starting point. But yeah, there's tons in here around leadership specifically, Jackie. So I think that's just really cool that you're bringing that perspective to a lot of these leaders. That culture of flexibility and making sure that you find people that want to train, not necessarily forcing your best people to train all the time.
Right.
Making sure you understand what is making you money, the size of the project you're going after, the type of work that you're doing, so that you can go sell more of what actually helps contribute to your overhead. Seems simple, but wow, that's meaningful, especially as we, move into what could be considered a rocky, 18 months.
Right. Right.
And then
And
making
and
sure,
ag- sorry, go ahead.
no, feel free.
And just making sure that you, if you're not, if not you, then who? And if not now, then when? Who's paying attention to the numbers? Right. How do you know where to grow to if you don't know where you make money? So there's a lot of people have a lot of business owners have work to do there, because how do you know what skill set to hire if you don't know what direction your business is going to grow in? Because at a time like this, we really need to be focusing on treating our people well, paying a living wage, not minimum wage, but a living wage. If you don't know what a living wage is, Google it. Um, and I just wanted to leave you with, you mentioned John Maxwell's Irrefutable Laws of Leadership. And there's another really good book that he wrote. It's a small little book, and it's an easy read, and it's called How Successful People Lead.
Ooh, nice. I was going to ask for a resource at the end. You just knocked it out of
Yeah.
the park. So John
um,
C. Maxwell, How
How
Successful
Successful
People Lead.
People Lead. And then he has two, they're both small little, like small little half-size book and hardcover in there. The other one is How Successful People Grow. So How Successful People Lead covers his 5 levels of leadership. And um, How Successful People Grow is also a really, really good little quick read. Look, they're like $10 on Amazon or whatever, $8 to $10 each. And I think those two little books, if you want to grow a business, you got to grow the leadership first, right?
Success is between
Um,
the ears more than it's
suc-
on paper.
and it's in the heart. Like it's success is in it. So many of us are passionate about what we do. So if your heart's not in it, and if your heart doesn't stay in it, then you can't grow a business. And I realized that with my landscape company. I got to a certain point and I just said, you know what? I really like helping other people to stop making the mistakes that I made and to really learn how to grow a business. I ran a highly profitable company. It was very efficient, high end, um, waterfront residential, vacation home, um, soft landscaping and maintenance and design, and sold it for 7 figures. You don't get a lot of people who do that in the maintenance business.
Mm.
And I knew it was time to move on. Like I just knew, I felt in my heart that I really wanted to do coaching and consulting work. And I felt I could bring better value than continuing doing what I did.
Well said.
So knowing when it's time to shift and to change what you're doing, or knowing that you're doing what you need to be doing. Like leadership is about, first of all, the passion, and it's got to be right in your heart.
Love it. Jacki, thank you so much for doing
Yes.
this. You finished
Hey.
with what one could deem as a beautiful pun. Success is in your heart. And we just had Jacki Hart do an awesome episode of I Am Landscape Growth. So thank you so much for being a part of this. If someone wants to reach out, what's the best way?
My website, consultingbyheart.com.
Consultingbyheart, HART.com, consultingbyheart.com. You're the best. Thank you
Great.
so much for doing this. Thanks
Thanks,
everybody
Rob.
for
What a
listening.
pleasure.
The I Am Landscape Growth podcast is brought to you by Intrigue, where passionate marketing meets predictable results for entrepreneurs. Remember to like and subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss the next episode. And if you would like to be a guest on the podcast, please visit intriguemedia.com and click on podcasts.